This is Steven Melin, and today we're going to review Voxpat, a voice-generating software. Voxpat is a voice-generating software from Digital Brain Instruments, and it's labeled as a real-time monster, creature, and robotic voice designer. Now, I think most people will use this for sound design, especially for vocal effects. And in fact, actually, Far Cry Primal recently used this to create many of their monster effects. But as a music composer, I'm excited to try using this as, well, a plugin in my DAW to try to create really interesting custom sounds. So from a musical standpoint, what I like to do is over here in the instrument slider. You got to slide that up to make sure you have enough volume and make sure you're not peaking. And you can tell once you start playing your instrument, the little bars here, if it hits red, you're going too hot. So make sure you're sliding it, that and the master knob to make sure that you're staying at a good level. You're not peaking or clipping. Over here, you're going to hit the edit tab and this little menu pops up. Make sure you have your MIDI device, which would be your MIDI controller for me right now. And make sure that the unit is on, and you're going to choose something, one of your plugins from your computer, and got to find where those are at. And I'm going to choose Massive just because that's a very simple sound generator. It's a synthesis engine from Native Instruments, a wonderful, wonderful thing for playing around with video game music in particular with different sound waves. So I'm going to hit View to actually see the instrument, to show you what I'm doing here. Now I'm just going to leave it at the default sound, which sounds like this. Very simple. And that's good because I want to start manipulating it with the engine so you can actually hear what's going on. So here we go. I'm going to mute the dry signal. I'm just going to play around a little bit with some of the knobs and see what we can come up with. I already like that. That already has a very Game Boy Zelda kind of feel because it adds a delay and it octave shifts. So what's cool about a lot of these effects is these ones on the left, the Fear, Beast, Roar, and Burst, what they do is they, I don't necessarily know all the technical terms here, but essentially it's changing the pitch and it's throwing it down very low. It's octave shifting it. And then Beast in particular, actually, it goes a little bit less than an octave so that it actually sounds very dissonant and you can kind of hear it. I'm just going to play one note with using the Beast. You hear how it's slightly detuned. And then if we go to the Fear, you can hear how it starts to sound really detuned. And you start mixing these things together, you get all sorts of interesting sounds that can be really useful. I really love the shifter one as well because it starts to use the other effects and modulate it even further. That's cool. So you kind of get the idea of how you might use that to create your own unique sounds. So I'm going to try with one more sound just to give you something very different. And I found that this app tends to work best either with very simple sounds like that you can manipulate heavily, or to even try something. I'm going to go over to Absynth, which is another Native Instruments plugin. Another synthesis type thing, but I'm actually going to get a synth type sound so that you can hear how that's different. So here's Absynth. I'm going to just get a synth pad, something simple. That's cool, and that's just playing one note. So the fear adds a bit of a delay effect while changing the pitch, which sounds really cool with a pad because it constantly repeats, like a stutter effect. And then the beast adds it further. This would be really cool for horror music, or just suspense. This could easily be layered with all sorts of things, but it acts as a nice bed. And already with just 2 little knobs, I've created something that would probably take me 15 minutes otherwise to create using who knows how many effects. And that's not necessarily something I would have sought out to create in the first place, but just by having these little sliders, it just quickly lets you play around, which I love. The noiser is another really good filter because it adds a lot of depth to your sound, like a background ambience. Really good for pads. And the D pitch over here is also extremely interesting because what it does is it starts morphing your pitch. It goes up and down like a flanger, which really morphs your sound. The ring over here adds a little high pitched squeal. You can really hear on that one how the pitch starts climbing, kind of like that. So that's kind of the basis of how this engine works, and I could spend hours just playing around with sounds on here, which is the fun of it, I think. But now I want to show you the recording process. So if you hit the recording tab up here, you'll notice, like I mentioned earlier, you have this section where you can just hit record. And what's cool about this is you can just hit save as, name it real quick, and as soon as you save it somewhere, you then hit record, and it records as long as you want it to. And then as soon as you're done, you already have yourself a nice WAV or AIFF file that you can throw into your sequencer, which is really cool. Or if you want to be a little bit more efficient and you want to have more controllability with how you perform it and those types of things, you can actually, let me switch over to Logic here. You can go over to your DAW of choice. And right now, as I mentioned earlier, I have it set up where the input is Soundflower, which is the output of Voxpat. So all I have to do is hit record. And voila, I have myself a beautiful little wave here. What I like about doing that a little bit more than just doing a standalone is now I can actually record with a click if I wanted to turn that on, or if I wanted to already have the rest of my session playing in the background while I record. That's another way that I could very easily implement this into my workflow. So I encourage you guys, if you're interested in making really interesting sounds and trying to just expand your sonic palette, I suggest you pick up Voxpat. I think it's a really cool plugin that has a lot of versatility and a lot of possibilities with it. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and consider subscribing to my channel if you'd like to see more videos like this where I review other products and where I show you how to write video game and film music.